You addle-pated amateur. Addle-pated armor-bearer. You addle-pated armor-bearer. You addle-pated armor-bearer. You addle-pated armor-bearer. You aluminum canary.
You arrogant automaton.
You assassin. Astigmatic automaton. You automated oaf.
You babbling bird brain.
You babbling bumpkin. Barfly. You bellicose bumpkin. You bellicose bumpkin. You bellicose bumpkin. You bellicose bumpkin.
Big mouth.
You blithering blatherskite. You blithering booby. You blithering booby. You blithering booby. Blithering booby. You blithering bumpkin. You blithering bumpkin. Blithering bumpkin. Blithering bumpkin. You bloated splimp. Blubber brain. You blundering bag of bolts. Booby. Bah, booby. 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 Silence, booby.
Booby.
Bah, booby. Beware, booby. Beware. Booby. Begone, booby. Go, booby. 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 Begone, booby. Thank you, booby. Booby. You bookmaking bookie. My bosom companion.
My bosom companion.
My bosom companion. My bosom companion. My bosom companion. My bosom companion. Boy.
My brave hero.
Brave soldier.
You broken down has-been bubble brain.
You bubblehead. You bubble-headed booby.
You bubble-headed booby.
You bubble-headed booby.
You bubble-headed booby.
You bubble-headed booby. You bubble-headed booby.
You bubble-headed booby.
You bubble-headed booby. You bubble-headed booby.
Bubble-headed booby.
You bubble-headed booby.
You bubble-headed booby.
You bubble-headed booby.
That bubble-headed booby.
Buddy. You bulbous bumpkin. You bumbling bag of bolts.
You bumbling bird brain.
You bumbling bird brain. You bumbling bird brain. No!
You bumbling bird brain.
You bumbling bird brain. You bumbling bird brain.
You bumbling booby.
Bumbling bucket of bolts that you are. For this bumbling bucket of bolts. You bumbling cracker barrel. You bumptious booby. You bumptious braggart. You bumptious braggart. Silence, you bungler.
Bumbling incompetent.
You cackling cacophony. You cackling cacophony. You cackling canister. You cackling clod.
You cackling clod.
Silence, you cackling clod. You cackling clod. You cackling cloud.
You cackling computer.
You cackling card.
You cackling cuckoo.
You cantankerous clod.
You cantankerous cold-hearted clump.
You caterwauling cloud. You cautious clump. Silence, you chattering magpie. You clanking clod. Clatterbrains. You clod. You clod. This clod-like collection of condensers. Clumsy clump. You clumsy clod.
Clumsy clod.
Clumsy clod. You clumsy clod.
Clumsy clump.
You clumsy clump. No! Clumsy clump.
Clumsy clumsy.
You clumsy clump.
That clumsy has-been over there.
You, sir, are a clunker. Complete moron. You computerized clod. You computerized clod. You computerized clod. You computerized clod. You computerized clump.
You confused compass.
He's a coward. 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 Coward.
You cowardly clump.
You cowardly clump. You cowardly clump. Cowardly clump. You 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 cowardly clump.
My cowardly friend.
You cumbersome clod. You cumbersome clod. You cumbersome clod.
You cumbersome clump.
Cybernetic simpleton. Cybernetic skeptic.
Dear boy. Dear boy. My dear boy. My dear boy. Dear boy. Dear boy. My dear child. My dear friend. Dear friend. My dear friend. My dear friend. My dear friend. My dear friend. Dear friend.
My dear friend.
My dear friend.
Dear friend.
Our dear friend.
My dear friend.
My dear friend.
My dear friend.
My dear friend.
Dear friend.
Hush, my dear friend.
My dear friend.
My dear friend.
My dear friend. A dear friend. My dear good friend. My dear good friend.
My dear good friend.
Dear old friend.
Dear old friend. My dear old friend.
Dippity dunce. You defective detective.
Dehumanized lie dispenser.
You demented diode. You dummering dolt.
You deplorable dummy. You deplorable dummy.
You are a deplorable dummy. No! You deplorable dunderhead. You deplorable dunderhead. You despotic dunce. This digital dunce is a digitized dunce. You disreputable dunce. You disreputable dunce. You disreputable dunce. You disreputable dunderhead. Dr. Dunderhead. That doddering dunderhead. You doddering dunderhead. You doddering dunderhead. You dunce. You dunderhead. Dunderhead. Silence, dunderhead. Electronic mumbo-jumbo. My encyclopedic friend? You evasive coward. Is an expert mechanic. A fat lot of good you are. My favorite companion. My fellow Diamond King. You Ferrous Frankenstein. You fiend in tin clothing. Flat as a pancake. You floundering flunky. You floundering flunky. You fool. You foolish fop. My friend. My friend. My friend. My friend. My friend. My friend. You frightful fractious frump. Frozen Eskimo. You fugitive from a junk heap. You fugitive from a scrap heap. Fugitive from a scrap metal yard. You galumphing gargoyle. You gargantuan goose. You garrulous gargoyle. You garrulous gargoyle. You garrulous gargoyle. You ghoul. You gigantic gargoyle. My glass-headed friend. Quiet, you goose. You are a goose. He is a goose. Ye great and noble sire. You gregarious gremlin. You hard-headed harbinger of evil. You hardware hyena. A heroic robot. He's a hopeless heap of tainted tin. Hulking mass of mechanical ignorance. You hypertensive hypochondriac. You idiot! You idiot! You idiot! You idiot! You idiot! This ignominious ignoramus. You ignominious ignoramus. You ignominious ignoramus. You ill-informed ignoramus. Our illustrious friend. You are an impersonal collection of inanimate hardware. My impetuous friend. You incompetent idiot. You incompetent imbecile. The incompetent moronic lumps. That incompetent walking ingot. You ineffectual ineptitude. You inept gold bricker. You inept idiot. You infamous informer. You ingot of ingratitude. You ingrate. Was my inquisitive friend. An insensitive brute like you. You insensitive clump. My insensitive friend. You insensitive idiot. You insensitive idiot. Insensitive machine. You insipid ineptitude. Insolent. You iron-born ingrate. Reputable dunderhead. You irresponsible wine-bibber. You jabbering jackanapes. You jabbering Jeremiah. Jabbering Judas. You jabbering Judas. You jangling junk heap. John Barleycorn. You Judas. You Judas. You juvenile junk pile. Kind friend. You know nothing, numbskull. You laggard. You laggard. You lame-brained lump. You lead-lined Lothario. You lead-lined lump. Leaky umbrella. My learned compatriot. You lily-livered lead-lined lummox. You lily-livered lump. You lily-livered lump. Little mother. This lovely, gorgeous creature. Loyal and excellent friend. You ludicrous lump. You ludicrous lump. You ludicrous lump. You lugubrious laggard. That lugubrious lump. You lugubrious lump. My magnificent mobile. You malicious moron. He's a mass of fear. You mealy-mouthed rogue. Meandering mental midget. My mechanical friend. My mechanical friend. My mechanical friend. Our mechanical friend. That mechanical meddler. This mechanical meddler. That mechanical meddler. You mechanical misery. Mechanical misfit. Mechanical misfit. You mechanical misfit. Mechanical monolith. You mechanical moron. You mechanical murderer. You meddler. Mediocre medical misfit. You mental midget. Mental midget. You mental midget. This mental midget. That mess of metal. My metallic friend. My metallic friend. My metallic friend. This metallic ham. My metallic hero. This metallic monstrosity. You metallic murderer. My metallurgical friend. You miserable mass of metal. Miserable mechanism. You misguided mechanical misery. You misshapen mummy. Mr. Wrongway computer. You monster. You monstrous mechanized misguided moron. You monstrous metallurgical meddler. This monstrous mountebank. You mumbling mass of metal. Minor bird. You nattering ninny. You Neanderthal ninny. That Neanderthal ninny. You Neanderthal ninny. You negligent ninny. You nervous 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 ninny. You nickel-plated nincompoop. You nickering ninny. You 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 ninny. Ninny. You ninny. You ninny. You ninny. You ninny. 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 You ninny. Ninny. You ninny. Silence, you ninny. 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 Silence, Ninny. Ninny. You Ninny. Silence, Ninny. Ninny. You Ninny. Silence, you Ninny. Silence, Ninny. Ninny. Silence, Ninny. 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 You Ninny. Ninny. You are a Ninny. Ninny. Silence, Ninny. Ninny. You Ninny. 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 Be still, Ninny. Quickly, Ninny, put these on. Silence, Ninny. Go away, Ninny, go away. Ninny, Ninny. My noble friend. A noble robot. A nobody. You nondescript Ninny. A nothing. You noxious Ninny. Quiet, you obsolete oaf. Obsolete piece of scrap metal. You old booby. Oh, boy. You overcautious concoction. You parsimonious puppet. You pathetic pomposity. You pedagogical pipsqueak. You pitiable pipsqueak. You plasticized parrot. You pompous pipsqueak. You ponderous plumber. Poor old chap. You pot-bellied prankster. You pot-bellied prankster. You pot-bellied pumpkin. You pot-bellied prankster. You preening popinjay. You presumptuous pipsqueak. Presumptuous popinjay. That pretentious popinjay. You pretentious popinjay. This primitive pile of pistons. Proverbial Neanderthal Ninny. Puny pipsqueak. You pusillanimous pinhead. That pusillanimous pinhead. You pusillanimous pipsqueak. You pusillanimous pipsqueak. You pusillanimous punker. Pusillanimous puppet. My ramshackle Romeo. Rattletrap. Real great goose. That ridiculous robot. That ridiculous robot. You ridiculous roustabout. You ridiculous roue. Roly-poly rowdy. Rusty Rasputin. You sanctimonious scatterbrain. Scurrilous scatterbrain. You scurrilous scatterbrain. You scurrilous scatterbrain. Sententious sloth. He's merely a servo mechanism. That sickening cybernetic. Silence, sentinel. You silly goose. You silly goose. You silly goose. Oh, you are a silly goose. You silly goose. You silly goose. You silly goose. You silly goose. Hold your tongue, you silly goose. You silly goose. Silly goose. That silly old ninny. You silly sausage. You silly sloth. That silly, stupid, lovable old ninny. You silver-plated sellout. Simple Simon. Simple Simon. At your service, sir. 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 Sleek, sophisticated, charming companion. You sniggering cinderbox. You sniveling earthman. What a sorry specimen of computerhood you really are. My stalwart companion. My stalwart sausage. My steely-eyed sorcerer. Stubborn. Fire, stupid, fire. My stupid friend. His sweet prince. My tarnished friend. You tarnished trumpet. Tattletale. Tattletale. Terrified mechanical dunderhead. You tin-plated fool. You tin-plated fraud. You tin-plated fraud. You tin-plated snitch. You tin-plated tattletale. You tin-plated tintinabulation. You tin-plated traitor. Tin-plated traitor. Tin-plated traitor. Tin-plated traitor. You tin-plated tyrant. You tintinabulating tin can. You tiresome thesaurus. You traitor! Traitor. Traitor! You traitor! You traitor! You traitor! You traitor! You traitor! Just you wait, you traitor! You traitor! Traitorous electronic junk pile! You traitorous tintabulation. You traitorous tin-plated fugitive from a junkyard. That traitorous transistorized toad. You treasonous tyrant. You treasonous tyrant. True blue friend. My trusty aid. You tyrannical tinplate. You unctuous underling. You uncultured clump. You ungrateful underling. You ungrateful wretch. You unspeakable insult. You weakling. You worrywart. You worthless electronic scrap heap. You wretch!